Hello, all my peeps from the internet. Today we take a look at the composers who all lived past the age of 80. Some of them are quite amazing, as they lived many years ago, where life expectancy wasn't as high as today. The first one we have on the list is Jean-Philippe Rameau. He lived to the age of 80. What makes it even more amazing is the fact that he lived in the 17th century. The details of Rameau's life are very obscure. So his first 40 years of his life, there's very little known. He only came to fame really when he moved to Paris. He was extremely secretive, and not even his wife knew anything of his early life. Rameau died 13 days before his 81st birthday, on the 12th of September 1764. He suffered a fever. At his bedside, he objected to a song sung. His last words were, "What the devil do you mean sing to me, priest? You are out of tune." Max Bruch died at the age of 82. Bruch wrote his first symphony at age 14 and then won a scholarship so that he could go and study in Cologne. He died in his home in Berlin, Friedenau, in 1920. He was buried next to his wife, who died the previous year. Margarita, his daughter, later engraved on his gravestone, "Music is the language of God." I think that's beautiful. Olivier Messiaen died at the age of 83. He was one of the most influential French composers of the 20th century. He died in his sleep on a Monday evening at the Bourgeon Hospital in Paris. He was 83 years old, and he was living in Paris at that point in time. There are many newspaper clippings online announcing his death. The French Culture Ministry announced that Mr. Messiaen died after surgery, but it was never explained what kind of surgery he had. Richard Strauss died at the age of 85. Strauss had a Jewish daughter-in-law called Alice. Along with Alice's grandmother, 25 other relatives were murdered in the camps at the Theresienstadt concentration camp. In April 1945, Strauss was apprehended by American soldiers whilst he was living in Vienna. As he came down the staircase, he announced loudly that he is Richard Strauss, the composer of Rosenklavier and Salome. Lieutenant Weiss, one of the American troops, nodded, as he was also a musician. They placed an off-limits sign on the property, and he was left alone after that. From reading his biography, it sounded like life was quite miserable for them. Example, like most Germans, his bank accounts were frozen and many of his assets were seized by American forces. As he was elderly at the time, with very few resources remaining, him and his wife left Germany for Switzerland in October 1945. They settled in a hotel just outside Zurich. Strauss was hospitalized for several weeks after undergoing bladder surgery. After that, his health rapidly deteriorated. On 15 August, he suffered from a heart attack and he died of kidney failure quietly in his sleep shortly after 2 p.m. on 8 September 1949. Ralph Vaughan Williams died at the age of 85. He was quite a late bloomer. Only in his late 30s, once he studied with Maurice Ravel, did he start understanding his own musical textures. Even though he was in excellent health, Vaughan Williams died suddenly in the early hours of 26 August 1958 at the age of 85. He was cremated 2 days later after a private funeral. Charles Camille Saint-Saëns died at the age of 86. He was a true musical prodigy. He made his concert debut at the age of 10. He studied at the Paris Conservatoire and then followed a conventional career as a church organist. In November of 1921, Saint-Saëns gave a recital to the Institute for a large invited audience. People commented how vivid and precise his performance was, especially keeping in mind that he was already 86 years old. A month later, he left Paris to go to Algiers. He wanted to spend the winter there, something he has been long accustomed to. Whilst there, he died without warning of a heart attack on 16 December 1921. His body was taken back to Paris, and he actually received a state funeral. George Philippe Telemann died at the age of 86. He might not be well known to everyone, but he was one of the original composers, and the reason I included him in this list is because of his remarkable age, keeping in mind that he was born in 1681. This is truly an achievement for the time. He was a German Baroque composer, and whilst fame was easy for him to find, his personal life was always troubled. His first wife died 2 years after their marriage, and his second wife had extramarital affairs and had huge gambling debts, and eventually left him. Despite the fact that he was troubled by health problems and failing eyesight, he continued composing into the 1760s. He died on the evening of 25 June 1767. What was recorded at the time was that he died of a chest ailment. This name is a mouthful, but let me try. Giuseppe Fortunino Francesco Verdi died at the age of 87. He is mostly known as an Italian opera composer. From reading his biography, I discovered that he was a very hard-working man. Between the years 1842 and 1849, he composed 20 operas. During his last years, Verdi undertook a number of philanthropic ventures. He published a song for the benefit of earthquake victims in Sicily. He planned, built and endowed a rest home for retired musicians in Milan, and he built a hospital in Villanova Sull'Arda. Verdi suffered a stroke on the 21st of January 1901. After that, he gradually grew more feeble over the next week. He died on the 27th of January at the age of 87. Igor Stravinsky died at the age of 88. According to Wikipedia, his full name in Russian is Igor Fyodorovich Stravinsky. Born in 1882, he was a Russian composer, pianist, and conductor. From 1934, he was a French citizen, and in 1945, he became an American citizen. After spending almost 3 decades in California, in October 1969, Stravinsky and Vera, his wife, moved to a 3-bedroom apartment in New York City. One of his final projects was the orchestration of 2 preludes from the Well-Tempered Clavier by Bach, but he never completed this. He was hospitalized in April 1970 following a bout of pneumonia, which he successfully recovered from. 2 months later, he traveled to Evian-les-Bains by Lake Geneva, where he reunited with his eldest son Theodore and niece Xenia. On 18 March 1971, Stravinsky was taken to Lenox Hill Hospital with pulmonary edema, where he stayed for 10 days. He moved to a newly furnished apartment on 5th Avenue. He had a small period of well-being, but the edema returned again on the 4th of April, and Vera insisted that medical equipment should be installed in the apartment. Stravinsky soon stopped eating and drinking and died at 5:20 a.m. on 6 April at the age of 88. The cause on his death certificate is a heart failure. Interesting fact, he has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in 1987 he posthumously received a Grammy Award for Lifetime Achievement. The final composer on the list is Johann Julius Christian Sibelius, also known as Jan Sibelius. He was a Finnish composer and violinist. I have seen some silent films about his life, and it seems in his last years he very rarely met with the public, and he very rarely granted interviews to people. After his 7th symphony, he attempted an 8th one, but he was not successful. His 90th birthday in 1955 was widely celebrated. The Philadelphia Orchestra and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra gave special performances of his music. On the evening of 20 September 1957, Sibelius died of a brain hemorrhage at the age of 91. At the time of his death, his 5th symphony, conducted by Sir Malcolm Sargent, was broadcasting via radio from Helsinki. Also at the same time, the United Nations General Assembly was in session, and the then President of the General Assembly, Sir Leslie Munro of New Zealand, ordered a moment of silence, saying, "Sibelius belonged to the whole world. With his music, he enriched the life of the entire human race." I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a nice day and see you in the next video.